Commander Jake Sullivan stood on the bridge of Earth's defense station, watching the empty space beyond the moon with growing worry. The silence from the outer colonies had lasted 3 days now, and every message they sent came back with no answer. Something was wrong, very wrong. Lisa Martinez hurried onto the bridge, her face pale and her hands shaking as she held a data tablet. She was Earth's best scientist when it came to studying alien life, and Jake had never seen her look so scared. She walked straight to him and showed him the screen without saying a word. The images made Jake's blood run cold. Massive ships, bigger than anything humans had ever built, hung in space around the colonies. They were dark and strange, with shapes that hurt to look at for too long. These were not human ships. How many? Jake asked, his voice quiet. We count at least 50 major vessels and hundreds of smaller ones, Lisa said, her voice barely above a whisper. They appeared at every human colony at the same time. Jake, these ships are using technology we don't understand. They just appeared out of nowhere. Before Jake could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Every screen on the bridge lit up with the same message: incoming ships detected. Jake looked out the main window and felt his heart stop. The alien fleet was here, at Earth. The ships materialized out of empty space like ghosts becoming real. One massive vessel, easily 10 times the size of Earth's largest battleship, moved slowly toward their station. Its dark hull reflected no light, making it look like a hole cut out of space itself. All hands to battle stations, Jake ordered, but he knew it was useless. Earth's entire defense fleet would be like insects attacking a giant. Still, they had to try. A communication signal came through, and the main screen filled with an alien face that looked like a cross between a lizard and a bird. When it spoke, its voice was cold and emotionless, like a machine reading a list. I am War Commander Zekthos of the Galactic Hegemony. Your species has been judged and found unworthy of continued existence. You have 30 of your days to abandon all colonies and surrender your technology. All humans will report to designated relocation worlds where you will be contained until your final disposal. The alien's words hit Jake like physical blows. This was not a negotiation or a trade discussion. This was a death sentence. You will offer no resistance, the alien continued. Any attempt to fight will result in the immediate destruction of your entire species. You have shown yourselves to be chaotic and unpredictable, traits that threaten the order of our galaxy. Your time is over. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in shocked silence. Jake looked around at his crew and saw his own fear reflected in their faces. How do you fight an enemy that can appear anywhere and has technology beyond your understanding? Lisa was studying her tablet again, her fingers moving quickly across the screen. Jake, I'm picking up something strange in their transmissions. There's a pattern in the energy signatures that doesn't make sense. What kind of pattern? Jake asked. It's like their technology is fighting itself somehow. The energy readings keep fluctuating in ways that should be impossible with their level of advancement. Before Jake could ask more questions, President Chris Johnson's face appeared on another screen. He looked older than his 50 years, and the stress of the situation showed in every line of his face. All defense commanders, we have received the same ultimatum at every human world. The aliens are not bluffing. They have the power to destroy us completely. But I will not surrender humanity to extinction without a fight. Jake felt a spark of hope at the president's words. If they were going to die, they would die fighting. I'm ordering all military forces to begin immediate evacuation of civilian populations to secure locations, the president continued. We need time to study these aliens and find their weaknesses. Every species has weaknesses, even ones as advanced as these. Over the next few hours, Jake watched as alien ships took positions around Earth and every human colony. They did not attack, but their presence was a constant threat. The 30-day countdown had begun. Lisa worked without sleep, analyzing every piece of data they could gather about the alien ships. Other scientists across human space did the same, sharing information through secret channels the aliens had not yet discovered. On the 3rd day, Lisa made a discovery that changed everything. The aliens' technology created a specific type of energy field, and human brain activity seemed to interfere with it in small but measurable ways. She brought her findings to Jake with excitement in her voice for the first time since the aliens arrived. We might have found something, she said. It's not much, but it's a start. These aliens might be more vulnerable to us than they think. Jake looked at the data and felt the first real hope he had experienced since this nightmare began. Humanity was facing extinction, but they were not going quietly. They would find a way to fight, to survive, and maybe even to win. The war for humanity's survival had begun. Captain Amy Rodriguez crouched behind the twisted metal remains of what used to be Mars Colony's main transportation hub. The alien bombardment had turned the red planet's largest city into a wasteland of broken buildings and smoking craters, but Amy and her team were still alive, still fighting, and still learning. 2 weeks had passed since the hegemony's ultimatum, and their patience was running out. The aliens had begun systematic attacks on human military installations across the galaxy, but they were not trying to kill everyone yet. They wanted humans alive for their relocation camps, which made their attacks careful and precise. Amy watched through her scope as alien ground troops moved through the ruins below. They were tall, grey creatures with 4 arms and movements that seemed to coordinated, like they were all controlled by the same mind. Their weapons fired beams of purple energy that could cut through steel. But Amy had noticed something important about how they fought. They always used the same tactics, she whispered to her second-in-command, Corporal Dan Murphy, who had escaped from New Arizona when his colony fell. Watch them. Every patrol follows the exact same pattern. They never change, never adapt. Dan nodded as he watched the aliens through his own scope. Back on New Arizona, we hit them with the same trap 3 times. They fell for it every single time. It's like they can't learn from mistakes. This discovery had spread through the human resistance networks. The aliens were incredibly advanced, but they seemed incapable of thinking outside their established patterns. Amy's people had used this weakness to survive attacks that should have wiped them out completely. Meanwhile, in the Jupiter system, Dr. Kevin Brooks worked day and night. In his research station's hidden laboratory, the station was supposed to be abandoned, but Kevin and a small team of scientists had stayed behind to study pieces of alien technology recovered from destroyed ships. Kevin held up a small device that pulsed with blue light. It was a power cell from an alien weapon, and it should have been impossible for humans to understand how it worked. But somehow, Kevin had not only figured it out, he had made it work better. The energy output is up by 30%, he told his assistant, Dr. Helen Wright, who was monitoring the readings. And it's more stable than it was when the aliens were using it. Helen shook her head in amazement. How is that possible? We've had this technology for less than 2 weeks, and we're already improving on designs that are probably thousands of years old. Kevin had a theory about that, but it seemed too crazy to believe. Every time a human touched alien technology, something changed in how it worked. The changes were small at first, but they added up. It was as if human contact made the technology more creative, more flexible. Back on Mars, Amy's resistance cell was preparing for their biggest operation yet. They had learned that the aliens were setting up a command center in the old mining complex, and Amy planned to hit it with everything they had. But first, they had a secret weapon to test. Maria Santos, who had been an art teacher before the war, had discovered something incredible while hiding in the alien-occupied zones of Earth. She had been captured by alien guards and held in a detention center. But instead of being processed for relocation, something unexpected happened. Maria had started drawing pictures on the walls of her cell, using pieces of charcoal from the burned city, simple drawings of flowers, trees, and human faces. The alien guards who came to check on her began staying longer each time, staring at the pictures with expressions that looked almost like confusion. After 3 days, one of the guards actually spoke to her. Its voice was stilted and mechanical, but it asked questions about the drawings. Why did humans create images that served no practical purpose? What was the meaning behind showing things that were not real? Maria realized that the aliens had never encountered art before. Their civilization was based on pure function and efficiency. The idea of creating something just because it was beautiful or meaningful was completely foreign to them. When other resistance members rescued Maria from the detention center, she brought this knowledge with her. Now Amy's team was about to test whether human creativity could be used as an actual weapon. The attack on the alien command center began at dawn. Amy's fighters hit the facility from 3 directions, using weapons modified with alien technology that Kevin's team had improved. The aliens responded exactly as Amy predicted, following their standard defensive pattern. But this time, Amy had something new. As her team fought their way into the building, Maria set up speakers throughout the complex and began broadcasting human music, poetry, and recordings of laughter and crying. The effect on the alien defenders was immediate and devastating. Coordinated alien movements became confused and erratic. Guards stopped following orders and stood motionless, as if they were trying to process something their minds could not understand. Some aliens actually dropped their weapons and walked away from the fighting. Amy and her team captured the command center with minimal casualties, and more importantly, they captured several alien prisoners. For the first time since the war began, humans had living aliens to study and question. Dr. Nicole Adams, who had joined the resistance after her colony on Kepler Prime was destroyed, interviewed the captured aliens. What she learned was disturbing but also gave her hope. That aliens called themselves the hegemony, and they had conquered hundreds of worlds over thousands of years. Every other species they encountered followed predictable patterns of thought and behavior. The hegemony's success came from their ability to understand and control these patterns, but humans were different. Human thoughts were chaotic and unpredictable in ways that the hegemony had never encountered. This made humans dangerous because the aliens could not predict what humans would do next. They are afraid of us, Nicole reported to Amy after the interviews, not afraid of our weapons or our armies, but afraid of the way we think. They have never met a species they could not understand and control. As news of the successful attack spread through the resistance networks, Amy realized that humanity had found its edge. They were not just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting a war that the aliens did not know how to win. The resistance was growing stronger, smarter, and more creative with each day. The aliens wanted to erase humanity because they feared what humans represented. But instead of being erased, humanity was becoming something the galaxy had never seen before. Deep beneath Cheyenne Mountain, Dr. Helen Wright stared at readings that should have been impossible. The captured alien technology was responding to human presence in ways that defied everything science understood about how machines worked. Every human who came near the devices caused changes in their energy patterns, and those changes were always improvements. Helen wiped sweat from her forehead as she studied the data for the 100th time. She had been working for 18 hours straight, but the discovery was too important to stop. 3 months had passed since the hegemony's ultimatum, and the aliens were growing impatient. They had begun destroying empty human colonies as a warning that their patience was running out. Dr. Wright, you need to see this, called Dr. Patricia Moore from across the laboratory. Patricia had been working with a team of captured alien scientists who had been affected by exposure to human culture. These aliens, who called themselves defectors, were helping humanity understand hegemony technology and weaknesses. Helen walked over to Patricia's workstation and saw something that made her gasp. The screen showed brain scans of humans and aliens, side by side, but the human scans were unlike anything she had ever seen before. Human brain activity creates quantum interference patterns, Patricia explained, pointing to the swirling energy formations on the screen. These patterns are completely random and chaotic, but they interact with hegemony technology in predictable ways. It's like our thoughts are naturally designed to disrupt their systems. Helen studied the readings more carefully. But why would this happen? How could human brains naturally interfere with technology we've never seen before? Before Patricia could answer, Captain Tony Richards entered the laboratory. He had just returned from a mission that nobody had expected to succeed. Tony and his team had actually captured a hegemony command ship, something the aliens thought was impossible. The ship is secure and ready for study, Tony reported to Helen, but we lost 2 men in the process. The aliens fought like they were protecting something more important than their own lives. Helen and Patricia followed Tony to the captured ship, which was being held in a specially constructed hangar. The vessel was beautiful in an alien way, with smooth curves and a surface that seemed to shift colors as they looked at it. But what made Helen's heart race was what happened when they got close to it. The ship's systems began activating on their own. Lights came on, control panels started glowing, and displays showed information in alien languages that the computers were somehow translating into English. The ship was responding to their presence, becoming more active and more accessible the longer humans were near it. This is what we found on every system we accessed, Tony said as he led them through the ship's corridors. The technology doesn't just work better when humans are around, it actually becomes more helpful, like it wants to work with us instead of against us. They reached the ship's main computer core where Sam Collins was working with a team of engineers. Sam had been designing hybrid human-alien technologies that combined the best of both civilizations. His latest creation was a weapon that used human thought patterns to guide alien energy systems, creating effects that neither species could achieve alone. The ship's computer has been downloading human databases and learning our languages, Sam reported. It's also been modifying its own systems to work better with human operators. I think the technology itself is choosing to help us. Helen walked up to the main control console and placed her hand on its surface. Immediately, the entire room filled with holographic displays showing star maps, tactical information, and what looked like the complete structure of the hegemony fleet. The computer was giving them everything they needed to fight back. But the most shocking discovery came when Dr. Nicole Adams arrived with her latest findings about the alien defectors. Nicole had been studying the psychological effects of human culture on hegemony species, and what she had learned changed everything they thought they knew about the war. The defectors are not just changing their minds about the war, Nicole explained, as she showed them brain scans of the alien volunteers. Their neural patterns are actually becoming more human-like. Exposure to human creativity, art and music is rewiring their brains to think in ways their species never could before. Helen looked at the scans in amazement. The alien brains showed the same chaotic quantum patterns that made human thoughts so disruptive to hegemony technology. They're becoming like us, Helen whispered. The very thing that makes us dangerous to the hegemony is spreading to their own people. Captain Ben Walker chose that moment to arrive with urgent news from the front lines. Ben had been leading successful attacks against hegemony strongholds using the new hybrid technologies, and his reports had been getting more optimistic with each battle. We just received word from resistance cells across human space, Ben announced. The aliens are having problems on every front. Their technology is malfunctioning, their soldiers are deserting, and some of their ships are actually joining up. Sighed. Helen felt a chill run down her spine as she realized what was happening. The war was not just about survival anymore. Humanity was not just defending itself against the hegemony. They were changing the hegemony from the inside out. Carol Lee, who had been coordinating information warfare against the aliens, confirmed Helen's fears. We've been broadcasting human culture through captured communication networks, Carol reported. Music, movies, books, art, everything that makes us human. The effect on hegemony worlds has been incredible. Carol showed them recordings from alien planets where civil unrest was breaking out. Hegemony citizens were questioning orders, demanding explanations, and in some cases openly rebelling against their own government. The rigid order that had held their empire together for thousands of years was cracking under the influence of human chaos. We're not fighting a war anymore, Helen said slowly as the full scope of what was happening became clear. We're starting a revolution. The captured hegemony ship's computer systems suddenly came alive with new activity. Displays showed messages coming in from across the galaxy as more alien ships and crews joined the growing rebellion. The empire that had seemed unbeatable just months ago was falling apart from within. Helen realized that the hegemony had made a fatal mistake when they decided to destroy humanity. They had seen humans as a threat to their order, but they had not understood that human nature was not just disruptive, it was transformative. Humans did not just break things, they made things better. The aliens had wanted to erase humanity because they feared what humans represented. But instead of being erased, humanity was becoming the spark that would reshape the entire galaxy. The war was far from over, but for the first time since the ultimatum, Helen believed that humanity would not just survive, they would win. The revolution was spreading faster than anyone had imagined possible. In the depths of space near the Proxima Centauri system, engineer Sam Collins watched in amazement as his latest creation tore through a hegemony battleship like it was made of paper. The hybrid fighter craft he had designed should not have been able to exist, but there it was, proving that human innovation could take alien technology to places its creators never dreamed of. Sam's fighters used human pilots whose chaotic thought patterns guided alien energy weapons with deadly precision. The combination created effects that terrified hegemony forces because they could not predict or counter what the human-modified systems would do next. Fighter Squadron 7 reporting came the voice of Rebecca Green through the communication system. Rebecca was leading the hybrid squadron in their first major engagement against a full hegemony fleet. Enemy ships are retreating. They can't handle our new weapons. Sam smiled as he watched the battle through the command ship's sensors. 6 months ago, humanity had been facing extinction. Now they were winning battles against an enemy that had conquered the galaxy. But the real change was happening on planets throughout hegemony space. Dr. Nicole Adams stood in the central square of Kepler Prime, which had been liberated just 2 weeks earlier. Around her, humans and aliens worked together to rebuild what the war had destroyed. But these were not the same aliens who had invaded human space. These aliens had been changed by exposure to human culture. They asked questions instead of following orders blindly. They created art and music where before they had only built weapons and fortifications. Most importantly, they had learned to think for themselves. The defection rate among hegemony forces has reached 40%, Nicole reported to the resistance leadership. We're not just winning battles, we're winning minds. The alien defectors brought with them detailed knowledge of hegemony weaknesses. But more than that, they brought proof that the rigid empire was crumbling from within. Worlds that had been peaceful under hegemony rule for centuries were now demanding freedom and self-determination. Captain Ben Walker had seen this transformation firsthand during his assault on the hegemony stronghold at Wolf 359. His forces had expected a desperate battle against fanatic defenders. Instead, they found hegemony soldiers who laid down their weapons and asked to join the rebellion. They don't want to fight for the Empire anymore, Ben reported after the successful mission. They want to be free to choose their own path, just like humans always have. The liberation of Wolf 359 marked a turning point in the war. It was the first time that a major hegemony military base had surrendered without a fight. The victory sent shockwaves through both sides of the conflict, but for very different reasons. Humanity saw it as proof that their cause was just, and their victory was inevitable. The hegemony saw it as evidence that the human infection was spreading. Beyond their ability to control, Carol Lee monitored communications from across the galaxy as the revolution gained momentum. Her information warfare campaign had evolved from simple propaganda into a galaxy-wide awakening. Humans were not just fighting for their own freedom anymore. They were fighting for the freedom of every species that had been enslaved by the hegemony. Receiving surrender offers from 12 hegemony worlds, Carol reported during a strategy meeting. They want to join the rebellion, but they're asking for guarantees that humans won't become the new rulers of the galaxy. This request sparked intense debate among the human leadership. They had the power to replace the hegemony as the dominant force in the galaxy, but that would make them no better than their former enemies. President Chris Johnson made a decision that would define humanity's role in the new galaxy. We will not rule other species, he announced in a broadcast that reached every world in known space. We fight for freedom, not conquest. Every world that joins us will govern itself according to its own values and traditions. This promise had an effect that surprised even the humans who made it. Hegemony resistance collapsed on world after world as entire populations rose up against their rulers. The empire that had seemed unshakable was falling apart because its people no longer believed in its right to exist. Dr. Patricia Moore had been studying the quantum effects that made human influence so powerful, and her latest discovery explained why the revolution was spreading so quickly. Human consciousness did not just interfere with hegemony technology, it actually infected other minds with human-like thinking patterns. Every being that spends time around humans begins to develop independent thought, Patricia explained to a gathering of scientists and military leaders. It's like human consciousness is contagious, and the infection is spreading faster than the hegemony can contain it. This revelation changed how humanity approached the war. They were not just fighting with weapons and tactics anymore. They were fighting with ideas, creativity, and the fundamental human belief that every being had the right to choose its own destiny. The war reached a crucial moment when Admiral Frank Carter led the liberated human fleet against the main battle group near the galactic core. This was the largest space battle in galactic history, with thousands of ships on each side fighting for the future of civilization itself. But the battle was decided not by superior firepower or tactics, but by the mass defection of hegemony crews who refused to fight against their own liberation. Ship after ship switched sides during the battle, their crews finally embracing the chaos and freedom that humanity represented. Hegemony command ship is signaling surrender, reported Captain Jake Sullivan, who now commanded the human flagship. War Commander Zekthos is requesting permission to come aboard. When the alien who had delivered humanity's death sentence 6 months earlier stepped onto the human ship, he was a changed being. The rigid certainty that had made him terrifying was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like curiosity. Your species has done something impossible, Zekthos said to Jake in halting English. You have made us question everything we believed about order and control. We do not know how to be what we were before we met you. Jake looked at the alien commander and saw not an enemy, but a being who had been freed from a cage he had not even known existed. You don't have to be what you were before, Jake said. You can choose to be something new. The formal surrender of the hegemony fleet marked the end of the war, but it was also the beginning of something unprecedented in galactic history. For the first time in thousands of years, the galaxy was free from imperial rule. Every world would have the chance to determine its own future. As news of the victory spread across human space and beyond, celebrations erupted on every liberated world. But the humans who had started this revolution were already looking ahead to the challenges of building a galaxy based on freedom, rather than control. They had proven that even the most powerful empire could fall when faced with beings who refused to surrender their right to be different. The hegemony had wanted to erase humanity because they feared what humans represented. Instead, humanity had become the catalyst for the greatest revolution in galactic history. Operation Phoenix began at exactly midnight, Galactic Standard Time. Across every world where humans and their allies had been preparing for this moment, Rebecca Green felt her heart pounding as she led her squadron of hybrid fighters toward the massive hegemony fortress orbiting the core worlds. This was not just another battle. This was the final push that would either free the galaxy or see humanity destroyed forever. The hybrid fighters moved through space like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. They shifted and changed direction in patterns that seemed random, but were guided by human intuition working through alien technology. Rebecca's ship responded to her thoughts before she even knew what she was thinking, making maneuvers that should have been impossible. Phoenix leader to all squadrons, Rebecca called over the communication system. Remember, we're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting for every being who wants to be free. Across the galaxy, similar battles were beginning as the coordinated uprising reached every hegemony stronghold simultaneously. The revolution that had started with desperate human resistance had grown into something that spanned thousands of worlds and dozens of species. On the surface of the hegemony capital world, Admiral Frank Carter led ground forces that included humans, alien defectors, and liberated species fighting side by side. The sight would have been impossible to imagine just 1 year ago, but the human gift for making the impossible happen had changed everything. Frank's forces moved through the capital city with determination born from months of preparation. The hybrid weapons they carried were works of art as much as instruments of war, combining alien efficiency with human creativity to devastating effect. Resistance is lighter than expected, Frank reported to the command ship. Most of the hegemony forces are surrendering rather than fighting. I think they know this war is already over. The ease of their advance was not entirely surprising. Intelligence reports had shown that hegemony morale had collapsed across their entire empire. Decades of rigid order had not prepared them for an enemy that turned their own people against them simply by existing. Dr. Patricia Moore watched the battle from the communications center, where she coordinated the quantum network that now connected liberated worlds across the galaxy. Her breakthrough in understanding human consciousness had made this galaxy-wide coordination possible, allowing instant communication between allies separated by thousands of light-years. All sectors reporting successful advances, Patricia announced. To the command staff, the Hegemony Central Command is requesting terms for complete surrender. But the most important battle was happening not in space or on the ground, but in the minds of beings across the galaxy. Carol Lee had spent months preparing for this moment, when humanity would offer the ultimate choice to every living being in hegemony space. Citizens of the galaxy, Carol's voice reached every world through the quantum communication network. Today you have the chance to choose your own future. The age of imposed order is ending. The age of chosen freedom is beginning. The response was immediate and overwhelming. On world after world, hegemony citizens rose up, not in violence, but in celebration. They tore down monuments to imperial power and began creating art, music, and literature that expressed their own unique cultures for the first time in centuries. Sam Collins watched from his engineering station as hegemony ships throughout the galaxy began broadcasting surrender signals. But these were not defeated enemies giving up. These were liberated beings choosing to join something better than what they had lost. Incoming message from Hegemony High Command, reported Captain Tony Richards. War Commander Zekthos wants to speak with our leadership. When Zekthos appeared on the main screen, he looked nothing like the arrogant conqueror who had delivered humanity's ultimatum 1 year ago. The rigid certainty was gone, replaced by something that looked like wonder mixed with confusion. We surrender unconditionally, Zekthos said, his voice carrying emotions that his species had supposedly forgotten long ago, but we do not understand what you want from us. Every species we have encountered sought to replace us as rulers of the galaxy. What do humans truly want? Admiral Jake Sullivan, who had been promoted to overall commander of the Liberation Forces, stepped forward to answer. We want every being in the galaxy to have what humans have always had. The right to choose their own path, make their own mistakes, and create their own destiny. Zekthos stared at Jake for a long moment before responding. This is not conquest. This is transformation. You have not defeated us. You have changed us into something we never thought we could become. The formal end of the hegemony came not with a great battle or dramatic destruction, but with a simple announcement that reached every world in the galaxy. The empire that had ruled for thousands of years was dissolving itself, its worlds and peoples free to choose their own governments and futures. But the real victory was visible in the quantum communication networks that Dr. Patricia Moore monitored. Across the galaxy, former hegemony worlds were reaching out to each other and to humanity, not as subjects seeking new masters, but as equals, eager to share knowledge and culture. Ben Walker stood on the bridge of his ship and watched as former enemy vessels joined his fleet. The crews were a mixture of humans and aliens working together with an efficiency that surpassed anything the rigid hegemony had ever achieved. The diversity that the Empire had tried to eliminate had become its replacement's greatest strength. Reports coming in from all sectors, Ben announced. The transition to local government is proceeding smoothly on 97% of liberated worlds. The few holdout systems are requesting human advisors to help with the transition. Maria Santos, who had discovered art's power as a weapon against rigid thinking, now found herself overwhelmed by the creative explosion happening across the galaxy. Former hegemony worlds were producing music, paintings, sculptures, and literature at a pace that strained communication networks. They're not just copying human art, Maria reported with excitement in her voice. They're creating entirely new forms of expression based on their own cultures and experiences. It's like the galaxy is waking up from a 1,000-year sleep. Dr. Nicole Adams watched this cultural awakening with professional fascination and personal joy. Her studies of how human influence changed alien psychology had become the foundation for understanding how diverse species could work together without losing their individual identities. The psychological transformation is complete and apparently permanent, Nicole reported. Former hegemony species are not just thinking independently, they're thinking creatively, questioning authority, and forming their own opinions about everything, from government to art to the meaning of existence itself. As Operation Phoenix concluded with complete success, humanity found itself in a position no species in galactic history had ever occupied. They had won a war not by conquering their enemies, but by freeing them. They had gained allies not through force or treaty, but by sharing the simple belief that every being deserved the right to choose. The galaxy that emerged from the ashes of the hegemony was chaotic, unpredictable, and absolutely alive with possibility. Thousands of worlds were conducting experiments in self-government, artistic expression, and technological innovation. It was everything the old empire had feared, and everything humanity had always believed was possible. Jake Sullivan stood in the observation deck of his flagship and looked out at a galaxy transformed. Just 1 year ago, humanity had faced extinction. Now they had become something that the hegemony had never expected and could never have prepared for. They had become legends. 5 years had passed since the day War Commander Zekthos delivered humanity's death sentence, and the galaxy bore no resemblance to the rigid empire he had once served. Admiral Jake Sullivan walked through the corridors of Unity Station, the massive space platform that served as a meeting place for representatives from thousands of worlds, each governing itself according to its own chosen values. The station itself was a work of art, created by dozens of species working together. Human engineering merged seamlessly with alien technologies, while artistic elements from hundreds of cultures created spaces that were both functional and beautiful. It represented everything the old hegemony had claimed was impossible. Paused at an observation window and watched ships from across the galaxy arriving and departing in a constant stream of peaceful commerce and cultural exchange. Human vessels worked alongside former hegemony designs that had been modified by their crews to reflect new values of creativity and individual expression. No two ships looked exactly alike anymore. "The morning briefing is ready," said Captain Amy Rodriguez, who now served as Jake's chief of staff. Amy had traded her role as a resistance fighter for the more complex challenge of helping build a galaxy based on cooperation rather than conquest. In the briefing room, Jake met with a council that had replaced both human military command and hegemony central control. The council included humans, former hegemony species, and representatives from worlds that had been liberated during the revolution. They met not as rulers of the galaxy, but as coordinators helping billions of beings learn to govern themselves. Dr. Lisa Martinez, now director of the Galactic Institute for Creative Sciences, presented her latest report on the continuing transformation of former hegemony species. "The psychological changes are not only permanent but are continuing to evolve," Lisa explained. Species that had been identical in behavior for thousands of years are developing distinct cultural differences based on their individual experiences with freedom. This ongoing change fascinated human scientists and philosophers. The rigid conformity that had made the hegemony strong had also made it fragile. Once beings learned to think for themselves, they could never go back to blind obedience. Ben Walker, who now commanded the Galactic Peacekeeping Force, reported on his latest mission to help settle a dispute between two former hegemony worlds. The conflict was resolved through negotiation and compromise, with both sides creating a solution that neither could have imagined under the old system, Ben said. They're learning that problems can be solved through creativity rather than force. The Peacekeeping Force was unlike any military organization the galaxy had ever seen. Its members came from every species and served not to conquer or control, but to protect the freedom that the revolution had won. They intervened only when worlds requested help, and their goal was always to help beings solve their own problems, rather than imposing solutions from outside. Dr. Patricia Moore had continued her research into the quantum effects of human consciousness, and her discoveries had led to technologies that seemed like magic to previous generations. The quantum communication network now allowed instant contact between any points in the galaxy, enabling cooperation on a scale never before possible. We're receiving requests for assistance with everything from agricultural development to artistic education, Patricia reported. The demand for human advisors continues to exceed our ability to supply them, but other species are beginning to take over these roles as they develop their own expertise. This was exactly what humanity had hoped for. Rather than becoming permanent rulers or teachers, humans were helping other species develop their own capabilities for creative problem-solving and independent thought. Carol Lee had transformed her information warfare expertise into something more constructive. She now coordinated the Galaxy Cultural Exchange, a program that shared art, literature, music, and ideas among all participating worlds. The cultural explosion that had begun during the revolution showed no signs of slowing down. We're documenting over 10,000 new art forms that have emerged in the past year alone, Carol reported with obvious excitement. Species are not just rediscovering their own cultures, they're creating entirely new ways of expressing themselves. The meeting was interrupted by an alert from the station's communication center. Sam Collins, who had become the galaxy's leading expert on hybrid technologies, appeared on the main screen with news that made everyone sit up straighter. Long-range sensors have detected signals from beyond the galactic rim, Sam reported. It looks like we're about to make contact with civilizations from other galaxies. The signals show technology patterns we've never seen before. This news sparked intense discussion among the council members. Humanity's experience with the hegemony had taught them to be cautious about first contact with advanced civilizations, but it had also shown them the importance of approaching such encounters with open minds and peaceful intentions. Jake looked around the table at faces representing dozens of species, all united by their commitment to freedom and cooperation. How do we want to approach this contact, he asked. That the discussion that followed would have been impossible under the old hegemony system. Each representative offered suggestions based on their species' unique perspective and experience. Former enemies worked together to develop a plan that balanced caution with the curiosity that had become the galaxy's defining characteristic. Dr. Nicole Adams, whose psychological research had been crucial to understanding how freedom transformed minds, offered the final piece of the puzzle. We should approach them as the galaxy we've become, not as individual species. Our diversity is our strength, and our unity is our choice. Rebecca Green, who now led exploration missions to uncharted regions of the galaxy, volunteered to command the first contact mission. Whatever we find out there, we'll face it the same way we faced the hegemony, together, as equals, with respect for everyone's right to choose their own path. As the meeting concluded, Jake reflected on how much had changed since that desperate day when humanity faced extinction. The species that the hegemony had tried to erase had become the catalyst for the galaxy's transformation into something unprecedented in cosmic history. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy, they had liberated it. They had not imposed their values on other species, they had shared their belief that every being deserved the right to determine its own destiny. They had not become the new rulers of the stars. They had become something better, they had become the guardians of freedom itself. Jake walked back to the observation window and looked out at the bustling traffic around Unity Station. Somewhere out there, beyond the rim of the galaxy, new civilizations waited to be discovered. Whatever they found, Jake was confident that this free galaxy would meet them not as conquerors or subjects, but as equals, ready to learn and share. Hegemony had wanted to erase humanity because they feared what humans represented. Instead, humanity had become legends not through conquest or domination, but through the simple revolutionary act of proving that freedom was possible for everyone. Galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly as humanity had always intended it should be.